Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most scandalous, interesting, and downright weird things that happened on the sets of classics. For this list, we'll only be looking at movies made before 1970.
We were supposed to try to keep it quiet, which was ridiculous. Once it broke wild, there was no stopping it.
Number 10, the subtext, Ben-Hur.
After all these years, still close. In every way. I hope so.
Tensions and budgets were running over on the set of this Best Picture winner. Injuries were piling up and the script was still being revised. Famed writer Gore Vidal did a rewrite on the script at one point during the shoot. Noticing a lack of tension in certain scenes between Ben-Hur and his old friend Messala, Vidal came up with a solution.
Let's say that these two guys, when they were 15, 16, when they last saw each other, they had been lovers, and now they're meeting again, and the Roman wants to start it up. Messala, played by Stephen Boyd, wants to start it up again with Ben-Hur, played by Charlton Heston. Heaven knows why, but he does. Anyway, he's Roman.
He revised the dialogue to suggest a homoerotic subtext between the two that might give a more dramatic motivation for their rivalry. This was known only to director William Wyler and actor Stephen Boyd. However, it was kept from star Charlton Heston because he might have objected.
So Heston thinks he's doing Francis X. Bushman in a silent version. His head is always constantly on high like this and like this. And Stephen Boyd is acting it to pieces. There are looks that he gives him that are just so clear.
Number 9, Sinatra vs. Brando, Guys and Dolls. Frank Sinatra set his sights on the part of Sky Masterson in the big screen adaptation of a Broadway hit, but that part went to Marlon Brando. Sinatra was instead cast as Nathan Detroit.
Can I believe my eyes? Is it really you?
How goes your percentage of life, Nathan?
Not bad, not bad. And you?
Healthy at the moment.
The crooner couldn't stand Brando's approach to acting, and the feeling appeared to be mutual. During a scene where Sinatra was supposed to eat a piece of cheesecake, Brando kept intentionally flubbing his lines. This made it so Sinatra had to eat more and more cheesecake until his co-star got it right.
Sky, don't think I am a pest, but do yourself a favor. Eat this last little bite of cheesecake. You will thank me.
Honestly, I couldn't swallow a mouthful.
Sinatra allegedly also was concerned about attention his wife Ava Gardner was paying Brando. One biographer alleges that the famously mob-connected Sinatra had Brando kidnapped, roughed up, and threatened in order to get him to behave on set.
Call it dumb, call it clever, but you can give odds forever that the guy's only doing it for some doll, some doll, some doll. The guy's only doing it for some doll.
Number 8, Welles vs. Hearst, Citizen Kane. Orson Welles' first and most famous film is the tragic tale of a newspaper tycoon whose heart and soul withers away with the more wealth he amasses. The star and director denied claims that Kane was based on newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst. He didn't fool anyone, including Hearst himself.
Within days, the word was out that Hearst was absolutely furious about this film and wanted it destroyed. Period.
Hearst retaliated, blocking any advertisement or mention of the film in any of his newspapers across the country. He enlisted journalists and gossip columnists to slander Welles. His biggest blow, though, was threatening to mobilize American anti-Semitism and xenophobia against the studios who dared show the movie in their theaters.
You Hollywood people who crave respectability do not want the country to think about and talk about and dwell upon the fact that you're all Jews, and that many of your key executives and directors and writers are now refugees from Germany. And he was right, they didn't want that. So they pulled the movie.
Although it was released in theaters and even won an Oscar, it made little money. Its reputation as a masterpiece came much later.
Until a few weeks ago, I had no hope of being elected. Now, however, I have something more than a hope.
Number 7, Dodging the Censors, Psycho. The infamous shower scene, where a nude woman is besieged by a knife-wielding figure, employs over 50 cuts to fool the audience into imagining most of the nudity and violence. But unsurprisingly, Alfred Hitchcock was constantly running into trouble with the censors.
Oh, you imp, you've got nudity in there.
Well, her breasts were rather large. It was a challenge not to show them.
When they ordered him to edit the scene for nudity, he came up with a great gambit. He merely waited a few days and sent it back unchanged. Censors who had sworn they saw nudity before were now satisfied, but those who hadn't initially seen nudity suddenly did. Hitchcock won out. The movie was approved, and the scene remained relatively unchanged.
Ain't no shower curtain.
Sam, look.
What is it?
It's
figure. It didn't get washed down. Look, some figure has been added to or subtracted from 40,000.
Number 6, suffering for their art, Singin' in the Rain. Making musical comedy is no joke. Debbie Reynolds famously said that the 2 hardest things she ever did were childbirth and making Singin' in the Rain.
We started that number, Good Morning, and it was nighttime when we finished. And we were really finished. Yeah. It was, I had blood in my shoes, and it was very difficult.
The musical numbers in the film were shot in long takes, leaving no room for error. Donald O'Connor completed his famous solo number Make 'em Laugh with a fever and was on bed rest for days afterward.
Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh.
Co-star and director Gene Kelly was not impressed with Debbie Reynolds' dancing and put her through her paces. He wasn't nice about it either. One day, she was so distraught she hid under a piano to cry. She was found by the legendary song and dance man Fred Astaire himself, who gave her some advice that encouraged her to keep going.
So he let me sit there by the door and watch him die, creating steps. He was just sweating, turning red in the face, and after about an hour, he looked over and he said, "That's enough. You see how hard it is? It never gets easier. This is the way it is. You go learn it." Yes, sir.
Number 5, filming with real birds. The Birds. Alfred Hitchcock was one of the most famous directors in the world. When he plucked Tippi Hedren out of obscurity, he had plans to mold her into the next Grace Kelly. But according to Hedren, his mentorship was more like ownership.
And it is oppressive and frightening. And you find out that you've been followed. And you find out that your handwriting has been analyzed.
While shooting The Birds, she suffered real cuts and injuries from shattered glass during the phone booth scene. But the real problem was the final scene in the attic of a house, where Hedren's character is nearly pecked to death.
Raven and seagull, boxes of them, which they just alternately hurled at me for 4 or 5 days.
Hedren didn't know until the last minute that real birds were going to be thrown at her. Many of her cuts were real. Afterward, the two reunited for 1964's Marnie, where the director's obsession with her made the set intolerable.
It's horrible, I know, but I do love you.
You don't love me. I'm just something you've caught. You think I'm some kind of animal you've trapped.
Number 4, the flood sequence, Noah's Ark. Long before he made Casablanca and Mildred Pierce, director Michael Curtiz was shooting an epic based on the story of Noah's Ark. During the flood sequence, he unleashed thousands of gallons of water on extras who weren't properly trained for stunt work.
And they came tumbling down topsy-turvy, with Curtiz screaming at them from the sidelines and throwing 2x4s into the flood because they started to stand up in panic.
Though impressive to watch, the scene led to several injuries. Lead actress Dolores Costello gave a visceral impression of her experience on set.
It was brutal. I called it mud, blood, and flood. It was much blood.
Apparently, Curtiz deliberately ignored established safety precautions to get a more realistic panic. The result was dozens of injuries, which allegedly required dozens of ambulances be called to the set. Some have even claimed that at least one extra was killed.
I found a man leaning against my dressing room door, which was really an office. And he was heavily bandaged. And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, 38 ambulances have left. I'm in better condition than most of them. And they're coming back for me.
Number 3, The Feud, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford only made one movie together.
I remember when it first came out, it got a tremendous reception. The critics described it as brilliant.
Whatever Happened to Baby Jane thrilled and fascinated audiences with its tragic, horrific look at madness and faded glamour. But the story of how it was made is just as thrilling. The lead actress's on-set antics have since become legend.
Are you threatening me? You'll kill me.
Worse, I'm going to steal this picture right out from under your nose, and you know I can do it. I am doing it.
Davis reportedly had a Coke machine brought to set just to spite Crawford, whose husband was the company president of Pepsi. Crawford is alleged to have strapped weights to herself for a scene where Davis had to drag her body. This hostility carried onto the set of what would have been their second film before Crawford was fired. You know it's messy when Ryan Murphy makes a whole miniseries about it.
Are you okay?
She did that on purpose.
I barely touched you.
Jesus. Well, are you just gonna stand there, you bastard?
Did you get it?
Number 2. On-set love affair, Cleopatra.
I want to be free of you, of wanting you, of being afraid.
That Caesar would not permit it.
Elizabeth Taylor stars as the Egyptian queen in this epic that almost bankrupted an entire studio. The production was beset by rewrites, a production shutdown, ballooning costs, and a change in director. After it was made, director Joseph L. Mankiewicz was dismissed by the studio, only to be called back to try to make hours of footage into a coherent film. But the big story was Taylor and co-star Richard Burton's extramarital affair.
You take so much of me with you so far. Remember, they want you to forget, please.
Forget? How? I can never be more far away from you than this.
Playing Mark Antony to her Cleopatra, Burton and Taylor's chemistry turned out to be very real. During a love scene, Mankiewicz had to yell cut several times to get them to stop kissing. The affair brought even more heat and publicity to the already troubled shoot.
When news of the liaison leaked out, Taylor and Burton became prime targets for Italy's eager paparazzi. Gossip was bought, sold, and published everywhere.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Injuries and near-death experiences, The Wizard of Oz. It's become a family favorite, but all that joy and magic on screen came at a great cost. Before Jack Haley was cast, Buddy Epson was originally to play the Tin Man. However, the aluminum dust they covered him with sent him to the hospital from a deadly toxic reaction.
One night I took a breath and nothing happened. They got an ambulance for me and got me down to the hospital.
Epson lived but was replaced by Haley. Margaret Hamilton suffered severe burns when a stunt involving a cloud of smoke and fire went very wrong.
You sort of tremble. You just can't help it. I was just shaking with it. And finally he got through and he said, "Oh, I know it's been awful, honey. He said, but I'll tell you about it. Right now I want you to know that there's copper in that makeup. And if I didn't get that off, it would have gone on eating into your face."
Also, that snow that Judy Garland and company are covered with in the poppy fields, that was asbestos. The challenging production of The Wizard of Oz is a testament to the blood, sweat, and tears that went into making classic Hollywood movie magic, for better or worse.
The sooner you get out of Oz altogether, the safer you'll sleep, my dear.
Oh, I'd give anything to get out of Oz altogether.
Had you already heard any of these behind-the-scenes stories? Tell us in the comments.
Are you hurt by the memory of that?
I was furious.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.